Let's go Buffalo. Day one of free agency. Technically, we have a few more days left, 2 more days left until the official start of free agency. But today was the legal tampering period, if you will, the unofficial first day of free agency, where teams could communicate with the representatives of these players, the agents of these players, and discuss some brass tacks deals. Buffalo has a myriad of needs heading into this period. Center, corner, wide receiver, arguably defensive end. A lot of needs that they could have kind of pinpointed their dart and thrown it at the dartboard to make their mark, to hopefully hit the bullseye, if you will. And in this episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Ryan Thomas, I'm going to break down some of the deals that Buffalo wrote to the players that they wrote them to. Mitch Morse, obviously, I think is the best move of the day for the Buffalo Bills. Let's just get started on that. Mitch Morse, center for the Kansas City Chiefs the last few years. Since 2015, per Pro Football Focus, Mitch Morse has not allowed a single sack since 2015. That is a phenomenal statistic, a phenomenal attribute for Morse, and one that is music to my ears, and he will be music to my eyes watching a big center snap the ball to my big quarterback, Josh Allen. This was a great signing. Big shoes to fill. Now, Mitch Morse is expected, nothing more, nothing less, by the Buffalo Bills fans to hopefully fill the shoes that were once kind of the path that Kent Hull once walked down. Fill those shoes. Fill the shoes of Kent Hull. And Hull was vital to Jim Kelly's success. The Buffalo Bills hope that Mitch Morse can be vital to Josh Allen's success. And everything starts up front, right? Everything starts at the line of scrimmage. They always talk about that, the line of scrimmage in the trenches of the game. We saw each and every week last season in the trenches of the game, the Buffalo Bills continuously found ways to lose those battles up front, whether it was on offense or defense, but most of the time I would say it was safe to say that it was on offense. The deal breakdown is 4 years, $44 million, and it's a deal that, I mean, yeah, it's $11 million per year, but I think that's a fair deal. I would say so, right? Based on position of need, based on plenty of other things, I think that's a fair deal. Now, you have a lot of reports in the lead up to this deal that, yeah, Matt Paradise was somebody that was in the know of a lot of NFL teams. He's got a lot of suitors. The Denver Broncos center, it was either the Denver Broncos center or the Kansas City Chiefs center. Those were 2 premier centers in the National Football League for the Broncos, for the Chiefs, that were made available. And Buffalo goes and gets Kansas City center. Great move for them. There's a link there between Andy Reid and Sean McDermott. Andy Reid probably knew, how good, obviously definitely knew how good of a player Morse was, but he knew more than anything that, if he were to go to a team like Buffalo, Sean McDermott would know what he brings to the table. And 4 years, I think that's a great deal. And a dynamic that wasn't talked about enough, in my opinion, is the fact that Morse is 3 years younger than Matt Paradise, who is seen as the number one center, but 26 to 29, I'll take the guy that's 26 all day, sign him to a 4-year deal rather than signing Paradise to a 4-year deal. I really read up on Mitch Morse during this process, and Mitch Morse was the apple of Buffalo's eye, somebody that they really wanted to go out. They targeted early, and obviously on the first unofficial day of the unofficial official first day of free agency in the National Football League in 2019, the Buffalo Bills sink their teeth into Mitch Morse, a big-time center. He's played 49 of his last 64 games without allowing a sack. And obviously there are some durability concerns. He did have some concussion issues. Those are not good issues to have for a center, but 4 years, $44 million. Buffalo went out and got the consensus, one of the top two centers in this free agency class, one of the best centers in the National Football League. For Buffalo to have that much of a need at center and to be able to get one in free agency, Buffalo, in a way, dare I say it, is a little bit lucky that they had this much of a need at this current juncture, with this offseason being led by, at the center position, as I mentioned, two of the best. Buffalo had the cap space to go out and get one. Thank you, Brandon Beane, for clearing that up for us. Earlier in the day, the first move that was reported was the reported interest between the Buffalo Bills and veteran running back Frank Gore. My initial reaction to that announcement was not so hot. I'm not a fan of the fact that Buffalo went on to sign this player, and it has nothing to do with the fact that Frank Gore isn't a leader. It has nothing to do with the fact that that he's not a locker room guy. Frank Gore is those things. Frank Gore is a great leader. Frank Gore is a great locker room guy, but the Bills, going into today, had the oldest running back group in the National Football League with Chris Ivory and obviously LaShawn McCoy. But now they just got older. Now they just got older as a roster, not just at the running back position, because right now Frank Gore is currently the oldest player on the Buffalo Bills roster, surpassing the ageless wonder, future mayor of Buffalo, Lorenzo Alexander. So the fact that this was a move that was made is a little perplexing, just based on the fact that Frank Gore is a lot older. He's not the same player that he once was, but Frank Gore did have some success last season, albeit in limited action versus the Miami Dolphins, over 150-some carries and over 4.6 yards per carry. So you do the math, that's pretty good numbers for a 34, 35-year-old running back at the time. Now Gore is 35. He will start this season with Buffalo at the age of 36. It's a one-year deal for $2 million. And I got to tell you, I wasn't happy about the news originally, and I'm not necessarily doing backflips right now, but I will say one of two things, 2 points that I have kind of gathered throughout the day. You have Frank Gore, who, yes, he's a consummate professional. Yes, he's a great leader. Yeah, he probably is in better shape at the running back position than the average 35, soon-to-be 36-year-old. I get all that. Frank Gore is a special player, folks. This guy will probably be in Canton, Ohio one day. I could easily see it. If not, players get robbed from going into the Hall of Fame all the time, but I think he is one. If I were to vote for him, he'd have my vote. He was a serviceable back in San Fran for so long, serviceable back everywhere he's been, Indy, Miami, you name it. And I like the guy. I have nothing against Frank Gore, so I don't want this to come off as if I have hate towards Frank Gore. I don't. I just personally believe that Buffalo needs to get younger at the running back position. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to get younger at the running back position. We still have something called the NFL draft, folks. And per everything that I have studied from the combine until now, Buffalo is one of the top teams in terms of teams that have talked, teams that have visited with running backs. Bryce Love was a guy that was kind of a sexy name prior to his knee injury. He visited with the Buffalo Bills and a few others. So I think Buffalo will go down the path of taking a running back in the NFL draft in 2019 this year in some of the middle rounds, maybe the third round, maybe the fourth round, maybe even the fifth. I could easily see that being a scenario that plays itself out. And if that does play out, which I believe it will, that does mean that you need to have that guy. And you know what I mean by that guy. I mean that guy that is the consummate professional, great leader in the locker room, that can sort of, quote-unquote, show the ropes to the young buck. The old bull in Frank Gore literally will show the young buck, the young bull, if you will, how to play at this level. What tendencies, what type of things you need to keep up on. And I mean, who better to learn from than Frank Gore? I know LaShawn McCoy could kind of be that guy in his own way, but I see Shady as a different type of personality that might not really fit that mold. Frank Gore is more of that mentor mold as opposed to LaShawn McCoy. LaShawn McCoy, his leadership was voted upon by the players. They voted him as the team captain, but his leadership kind of let them down, or lack thereof, as the season wore on. He had a few instances with Sean McDermott, and I don't necessarily see McCoy as that leadership type guy. I see Frank Gore more as that leadership type guy. So that's one reason. The second reason is the fact that I have a very valid source inside the college football ranks, and he told me that the University of Buffalo, the college team known as UB, the UB Bulls, they have offered a full ride to Frank Gore Jr. You do the math, that is Frank Gore's son, and if that is the case, that was pretty dang good reason for Frank Gore to come here. Or maybe they figure if Frank Gore's dad is here, he can be closer with his dad. It's a win-win, either opposite end that you look for it, either opposite end that you look at it. Did the Bulls help Frank Gore become a Bill, or did the Bills help Frank Gore Jr. possibly become a Bull? That's very interesting, and I am all in for that. That is a really unique, opportunistic story that I've never really heard before. I don't know if we've ever heard of an NFL running back at that age being signed by a team, and then his son, who's in the midst of starting his own collegiate football career, mind you, being recruited by a team that is in that same city. That's really rare, and I was really happy to kind of break that story, despite the fact that it wasn't confirmed by some of the bigger, recruiting sites. It was eventually confirmed, so there was a nice little story to crack, and I was really happy to kind of bring that to light and report that for the Buffalo Bulls and for the Buffalo Bills fans. I'm all in for a guy that is all in on Buffalo. That is my biggest pet peeve. Being a Buffalo Bills fan is having players possibly come here that don't want to be here, or players that do come here and realize that they don't want to be here. The Willis McGahees of the world, the Antonio Browns of the world. This is a situation that, it's not ideal. Frank Gore, 35, 36 years old. He's not the first guy on my wish list, but I want players that want to buy in to Buffalo. Other than that, I'm okay. I'm good. I'll go without you. I don't need it. I don't want it. I don't need a player that doesn't want to be here. I want players that want to be here, as does Sean McDermott, as does Brandon Beane. That is why Frank Gore is a Buffalo Bill, because, as in simple terms, he wanted to be here. And yes, I do think he still does have a little bit left in the tank. I'm not doubting the ageless wonder known as Frank Gore, nor am I going to doubt the ageless wonder known as Lorenzo Alexander. Age is just a number, but is Frank Gore what he once was? No, he's not. Can you still squeeze some juice out of him? Of course. The guy is a phenomenal pass protector. And so many things get misconstrued by things like fantasy football, by highlights, by all these things. The real nitty-gritty of the game, the real X's and O's of the game, are being oftentimes overlooked for those dynamics of football that are so overblown, so out of proportion. And I'm a fantasy football guy. I love fantasy football, but I am also an X's and O's guy. And an X's and O's guy, most common sense X's and O's guy, would say you need to have a running back that can do it all. You need to have a running back that can run up the tackles, run through the tackles, run outside, run counters, run delays, run misdirection. But pass blocking, we need Josh Allen to be as protected as possible. Yes, we're throwing out a 36-year-old running back to protect him, but this 36-year-old running back can still block. He's still got that intangible in his game. That has not gone away. So that is a facet of Frank Gore's game that made Buffalo very interested in him, among many other reasons. And is it the most sexy signing? Not necessarily, and I'm not going to advertise it as such. But do I get it? I just laid out the reasons why it does make sense and why I get it. Another signing by the Buffalo Bills today that I actually really like, that I know some people were not necessarily gung-ho about, but a guy that I think will really slot in really well, fit in really well, is Tyler Kroft, tight end, signed by the Buffalo Bills today, formerly of the Cincinnati Bengals, signed a 3-year deal for $18 million. The deal could be worth up to $21 million based on incentives. And yeah, 3-year deal. He's 26 years old. He's young. You look at the career of Tyler Kroft, and it's not one that really jumps out at you. He's not the biggest name. He's not the sexiest name, if you will. But I will say that Tyler Kroft does fit the mold in simplistic terms of what the Buffalo Bills are looking for at the tight end position. 6'6", 252 pounds, a tight end that signed for a good deal, a fair deal. 6.25 per year, can be worth up to $21 million. Now, I'm not too worried about this because between Mitch Morse, between Tyler Kroft, between Frank Gore, and between Johnson, the corner, they haven't released the terms of his agreement, but between Morse, Gore, and Kroft, they've spent $19.25 of their $76 million for next year. That's not too bad. That's not too bad. So I'm pretty happy about that in terms of the salary cap perspective. But with Tyler Kroft, one of the dynamics of him that I really like is his community service to every area that he's been a part of. Rutgers, Cincinnati, the Ohio area within Cincinnati. He's been phenomenal in terms of being one of those young guys that's a community leader. And now those things are kind of talked about, and I could see people roll their eyes and be like, those things don't matter. But they do matter. And furthermore from that, he's a wonderfully talented blocking tight end. And my tweet on Twitter was this on Tyler Kroft. We'll pull it up. Pull up the Thomas Take Twitter at Ryan Thomas Take. Getting more followers by the day, folks. So let's do this here. This was my initial post about Tyler Kroft. I remember Tyler Kroft from his days at Rutgers. He was one of the more compassionate players on the team and worked with many charitable organizations to help kids of all walks of life. I should have said from all walks of life. Hashtag Bills get a great blocking tight end and a good guy. Checks off both boxes. Checks off the good guy box. Checks off the blocking box. Checks off the receiving tight end box. This guy filled in for Tyler Eifert 2 years ago. He filled in very well for Tyler Eifert. So much so, he was fantasy relevant. Now, I know fantasy relevance, people can roll their eyes at that as well. But oftentimes, real-life relevance translates to fantasy relevance. He did very, very well in 2017. He got hurt in 2018 to the tune of really only having 4 catches last year. So on the surface, 4 catches last year. He had an injury. Why sign him to a 3-year deal worth up to $21 million on incentives, 18 without the incentives? Because he's 26 years old. He's hungry for an opportunity. He has a massive chip on his shoulder, and he has all the physical tools to lead us to believe the fact that he has the makings of being a solid player. He just needs one thing and one thing only: an opportunity. Opportunity knocked on his door. Opportunity's face was Brandon Beane, and his sidekick was Sean McDermott. And they gave him a great deal that he couldn't refuse, give him an offer that he can't refuse, and boom, he's in Buffalo. And I like that. I like that signing. I have no problem with it. People can try to chastise it, criticize it, whatever they want. But I really like that signing. I think it's underrated. He was a name that I linked to Buffalo in previous free agency previews. And I thought he's an underrated name, somebody that could have easily signed somewhere else for that same deal. I don't believe he was overpaid. You look at the market value on tight ends, it's very similar to his contract at this free agency period, depending on the name, but it's very similar. I'm not really pulling my hair over that move. Switching gears here, Kevin, is it Kevin Johnson? I think I botched his name. Kamar Johnson, I believe. He's somebody that I'm a little mixed on. And the only reason why is because you have some players that are very highly talented at that position. In Trey White, and also in Levi Wallace, and also in Teron Johnson. But you do need competition there. And that's why Kevin Johnson makes sense for the Buffalo Bills. I don't think I'm getting his name right, though. And I feel like I need to correct myself. So allow me to do that before I lose my mind. Frank Gore, he says, let's get it. Let's get it, Buffalo. He looks good in the Bills jersey in the cartoon there. That's not bad. I'm okay. I'm okay with that. All right, so let's see here. Trying to find it. I can't find the guy's name. Anywho, Johnson, I think, is going to be a player that is going to definitely compete alongside Levi Wallace for this number 2 cornerback position. Levi Wallace comes in, and yes, it was Kevin Johnson. Boom. I was right. Said Kamar, my bad. Kevin Johnson, I got Kamaru Usman on my mind from MMA. Kevin Johnson, a guy that he's played very sparingly the last few years, getting sparingly playing time, kind of in and out, can't really stay healthy, has had a lot of issues, but the one notion that I will throw you is that Jordan Poyer had very similar reactions when he was signed here in Buffalo. Oh, this guy had a really bad injury in Cleveland. He's kind of middle of the road. He's not really proven anything yet. That's okay. Because we're not asking this guy to light the world on fire. He'll either will or he won't. We're asking him to compete. We're asking for him to provide us with a different alternative to what we have if he can show us that he can provide that. If he can, great. If he can't, you're gone. It's as simple as that. But competition breeds success. I say this all the time. Competition breeds success. You have Trey White. You got Kevin Johnson. You got Teron Johnson. You got Levi Wallace. You have a lot of young, very talented corners. Kevin Johnson, former first-round pick corner. Trey White, former first-round pick corner. Levi Wallace out of Bama. Teron Johnson, a fourth-round stud. Nice pick by Brandon Beane there. You can't compete with that. Can't deny that. But Teron Johnson had an injury issue, a shoulder issue, and he's a small corner that throws his body around. Hopefully he can come back. But nonetheless, I don't disagree. I see the angle on all of these signings. Even the Frank Gore one. You can say I flip-flopped. You can say whatever you want. Yes, I did flip-flop. Because I want players that want to be here. Whether it's 1 year, whether they're 35 years old, 36 years old. If they have some left in the tank and they want to be here, I can't really argue with that. In the face of Antonio Brown, in the name of Antonio Brown, going through that saga for the 8 to 10 hours that I did, getting the lack of sleep that I did, just to find out that the guy wasn't coming here. Frank Gore kind of reminded me of why we should appreciate more players like him and why we should less appreciate players like Antonio Brown. And that might sound like a swipe, take it for what it is, but I said it, and I don't regret it at all. To all the people that think that Buffalo is a bad destination for these free agents, yes, Buffalo had to pay Mike Morse. Yes. Or Mitch Morse. Yes, they had to settle for, the players that they got. Whatever. They don't consider it settling. They want to go after players that want to be here. And I'm so sick of hearing about Buffalo being a dump, about Buffalo being this, about Buffalo being that. It's really ignorant for people to just say that without even playing here. Oftentimes, the players that don't play here are the ones that say Buffalo is a dump. The players that do play here never say that. And they could say that if they really felt like it. They would have a lot of reasons to say that, but they don't, because they understand that there's just as many reasons to not say that as there would be to say that. Buffalo is a city of good neighbors. There's some really good people here. There's some people that have hardworking jobs. There's some people here that are just, it is as dialed in a community to any NFL team as any. The best fan base in the NFL, maybe the best fan base in the world, between the Buffalo Bills and the Buffalo Sabres. And growing up here, living here my entire life, I have no regrets on that. Maybe eventually I'll move to another place, depending on opportunities and things like that. For the most part, this is my home. So if you're going to critique my home, you're going to have to get critiqued by me. You don't want that. I'm Ryan Thomas. This was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. The Buffalo Bills, day one of free agency is complete. Reshaping the offensive line, check. Depth at running back, check. Corner, check. Tight end, check. Brandon Beane's checking off the boxes, folks.